Sorry, okay, let me start again, because I didn't know if you were going to say anything.
You never know if I'm going to say something or not.
It's like Schrodinger's cat. Okay, let me start.
Okay.
Hello everyone, Merry almost Christmas, and welcome back to the Uncaging, with your regular hosts, Satyam Kanal and David Toro.
Merry almost Christmas.
This podcast, as you know by now, is dedicated to all things Nicolas Cage, mainly his movies, and in this particular episode, we are going to look at the 1984 post-Vietnam War drama movie, Birdy, directed by Alan Parker, starring Matthew Modine and Nicolas Cage. This movie is also on Amazon Prime, so it is very easy to go and check it out before joining us back here. So, if you haven't watched it yet, spoilers ahead for the movie. So, David, good week?
As always, doing well. I've been getting back into playing guitar. So
nice. Yeah. You told me the other day that you were playing in the morning. So
yeah, I subscribed to this YouTuber, Guitar Pilgrim. If anyone listens guitar, he's really, really good. So yeah, I've been slowly getting back into it. I stopped playing for a few months, mainly out of laziness. But yeah, always fun to play a bit of guitar to de-stress a hard work day.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you? How was your week?
Good. Well, about guitars, the only guitar lessons I have seen is Learn Guitar by David Brent on YouTube. So, if someone wants to check that out.
That's the only lessons you need.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the only lessons I need, honestly. And it's hilarious, just as, David Brent is. But yeah, my week was good too. Recency bias, but I remember the most recent part of the week more. First of all, shout out to Shreya. It's her birthday today for her and tomorrow for us. So happy birthday, Shreya, if you're listening. You will listen at some point.
Happy birthday.
And yeah, if anyone wants to wish her a birthday, so she's my better half. If anyone wants to send her a birthday wish, you can email to us and then I'll forward it to her. Yeah, so my week was good. It was like winding down, so classes are done pretty much. I'm grading for my students. I teach at UCSD. I'm a graduate student, but I'm a teaching assistant as well. So that's good. Holidays are coming up, which are nice. We were talking about your dad before, so I was watching a show on Netflix called The Queen's Gambit. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah, so I'm on the second episode.
Nice. It's a really good show. It's about chess. It's based on a fictitious character. So whenever I think about chess, I remember your dad. So, David Sr., if you're listening to this and if you want to play chess anytime soon, please reach out to me. I'm ready to tango with you. But it's a good show.
Those were some good times of hearing about his frustration.
It's a good show, so I'll let you watch it before talking about it. We can talk about it sometime. The best thing about my week, though, was I got this really awesome Christmas card by my favorite couple. It's sweet as always. I really enjoy it. So thank you so much to this wonderful couple. I'm not going to say who they are, but I really enjoy this tradition that we have going on. I have myself not written, so growing up in Nepal, we don't really have a tradition of writing or sending Christmas cards, so I'm not used to it so much. It's these guys that I only write to, and I keep forgetting. So thank you so much. I will write to you very soon.
I'm surprised that it came so quickly, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because everyone's been saying that the post office has been backed up. So,
well,
yeah.
They're doing a good job, for sure. So hopefully mine reaches soon as well, before Christmas. Although they might be traveling, so I don't know how that's going to work out. But anyways, they'll get it when they get it.
Yeah. Before we start, just 2 more shout-outs. Sarah for sharing us on Facebook, and then Danny Tavares as well for sharing us on Instagram. Shout out to both of you.
Oh
Thank
yeah,
you so much.
absolutely. Yeah, we really appreciate it. Especially Danny. We've been I mean, I have been out of touch for so long. Um so it was really nice for him to do that.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
to hear from him too.
Yeah. Oh, I heard from a couple of more lab mates too. It was really nice. I mean, it's always nice to hear good feedback, and they said they're looking forward to watching more movies. Especially Desi. I think Desi. So she's one of my lab mates as well. Shout out to you, Desi. We had actually an elaborate conversation about, and she's watched a lot of Nicolas Cage movies. It seems so. I'm looking forward to just talking to her, and hope she reaches out through the podcast as well, so you can hear some of her opinions as well.
Oh, and one more shout out to the person who would have been our guest.
Oh, of course,
this week.
Of course.
As we said last week, circumstances of his being prevent him from doing things on time.
Dude, it's in his nature. It's like he's the protagonist and antagonist of his story. Like, I think he's the noblest person and he wants to do all this good in life, but then he himself gets in the way. So I don't blame him. It's his internal battle,
Yeah, truly incredible. A marvel of personality.
Dude, it sounds like a Nicolas Cage movie. Like, he is a great guy, but he's up against another great guy himself. And he's like looking in the mirror and his reflection is like a darker version of him.
So yeah, we hope that he will be able to join us at some point in the very near future. Yeah.
So should we get into it?
All right. So we watched Birdy from 1984, and it is about Birdy and Al Columbato. Al Columbato is played by Nicolas Cage. Birdy, like you said, is played by Matthew Modine. Interesting, Matthew Modine. I've seen him in Stranger Things. The lab director at the, I can't remember, is it Hawkins, the
Hawkins
city.
Yeah.
And I've seen him in Flowers for Algernon, 2000 movie, and I'll go into it a bit because I did see some similarities between these two movies. But so it's basically two kids, I think they're 19 years old in the movie, and right out of high school they get drafted to go to the Vietnam War. At the beginning of the movie, Al and Birdy aren't really friends; they're just neighborhood acquaintances. And then before the war, they end up becoming really good friends. They go off to war. Things happen to them in the war that are very traumatizing, and then they come back. And we see throughout the movie that Birdy is completely in PTSD mode. Throughout the movie, he's in a psych ward in a mental hospital, and Al Columbato is trying to reel him in back to reality with memories of their childhood. So, very touching movie in that sense. And yeah, his name, Matthew Modine's character's name is Birdy. We never actually know what his name is, but it's Birdy because he has this obsession with birds, with flying, and there's some symbolism there, and some themes that we'll dive into. But yeah, overall, really good movie. I enjoyed it. I didn't particularly enjoy like the last 5 seconds of the movie, the very end. But the movie as a whole is great. I think it delivers a really nice, touching message, and it's nice to see Nicolas Cage co-starring again, I'd say that he takes more of a lead role in this movie. Yeah, but yeah, what did you think about the movie?
Yeah, so I looked it up, and then it's actually based on a 1978 novel of the same name, written by William Wharton. But the novel was supposed to be post World War II, it seems. And then in it, the narrator is again Al, who's Nicolas Cage is playing the character of Al. And apparently a lot of it happens in his head, so it was kind of hard to bring it out on screen, and they again switched it to post-Vietnam War. But this was fascinating. This was another one of Nicolas Cage's movie that deals with war. We saw Racing with the Moon having similar themes and like a similar pre-war. Yeah, well, in that case, it was like mostly pre. All of it was pre-war. War was just on the horizon, but hadn't happened yet. In this case, we actually see them post-war as well, and we're kind of juggling, looking at both sides of the event. But yeah, I think I enjoyed it too. I really liked the way they handled how war affected both of our lead characters. I liked how the movie is mainly about their friendship and how they bonded over something trivial as like pigeon catching. And how this bond just grew stronger over time. There was a breaking point, and then, which we'll dive into in a little bit, and they went off their separate ways. Both ended up in the war, being drafted, and then both had their own kind of event in the war that changed them, and then they both later became broken in their own ways, and then they found each other again, and they had to help each other kind of become more whole again. So it's a story about friendship, set in a pre-war, post-war kind of scenario, and I really liked it in that sense.
Yeah, I like the similarities that you pulled with Racing with the Moon. In this one, we kind of see the pre and post of the characters having the war. The war we only see a few minutes of. Really, we don't. We just see them with flashbacks. Racing with the Moon is all pre-war, same age too, right before they got drafted, and it's interesting too that it was originally written as World War II, and then they changed it to Vietnam. I wonder if it's because of the time that the movie came out. It would have been more timely in viewers' minds. But yeah, overall, really like the movie. Let's get into like the symbolism of Birdy and his character. So the very first exposure that we see of Birdy is he's up in a tree, and first thing is like is he? I was thinking that maybe he was mentally retarded, but it ends up that he's already obsessed with birds and flying and wanting this freedom. And Al is friends with everyone else in the neighborhood, and they're playing baseball in Birdie's backyard. Not backyard, but like the field,
like field next to
his
their
backyard.
house. Yeah,
Yeah.
behind their houses.
And every time they knock a ball out, it goes into Birdie's backyards. The mom hides the balls, and then one day, Al's little brother tells Al that Birdie took his knife. So then Al confronts Birdy, and that's really the first time that both two characters go head to head. Al asks Birdy to give over the knife, and Birdy eventually says that this other kid had sold it to him, and then they get into a brief fight, and there's like an instant friendship there because Al, we assume, is a wrestler for the high school, and Birdy is not, but Al recommends Birdy to go into wrestling because he seems to be doing well. So it's like a compliment, even though he was almost messing with his brother at the same time. But then right after we see Birdy and Al get into pigeons and getting into pigeon catching and then training them. And one of the quotes that I wrote down was Birdy is showing Al how to capture them, and then Al says, "What are you doing this for?" And Birdy says that he's training them to be carrier pigeons, and then Al says, like for the war or something. And at that point of the story, we don't necessarily know that they're going to go to war. So I thought that was really interesting, and then it kind of sets the stage of Birdy's development throughout the movie, obsessed with birds, obsessed with this freedom, which I don't know if it was apparent to you, like what freedom he wanted, because his family is, I mean, it's not the best family, but he has freedom in the neighborhood. It's not like he doesn't have, I mean, he's mostly alone. He doesn't have too many friends, but he finds a really good friend in Al. but he's always craving this freedom and to fly and to just be his own guy. And I don't know if it's clear to us where that stems from.
I mean, yeah, so this is actually my biggest gripe of the movie and why I felt unsettled watching it and why like it kind of took away from my experience. I think they pushed the bird obsession too far for me. Like you said, if it was more about freedom from his circumstances or from his life or, whatever. So we know that so the characters, Birdie and Al, are like more introvert, extrovert type. So you see Al being more, socially familiar with what's going on around him, good with like his friends, with girls, all of those things he's encouraging throughout the movie for Birdie to become similar to. Whereas Birdie is super introverted, he's in his mind most of the time. He's a very stand-up guy, but he just has this eccentric side to him. But I think they took the bird obsession so far. Now, I don't know if that was also in the novel. I haven't read it. But did we really need to like see it that far? Like the breaking point for me was definitely first of all, he just like jumped off of that building really early on in the movie and thought he flew. And the craziest one was after the prom night, he just went back home, stripped down, stepped into the cage that he had made for his birds, which are super cute, by the way. Birds are super cute. I like them. And he went to sleep thinking, I want to die and be reborn as a bird. And then he has this weird dream where he merges into his bird Perda and then starts flying around his room and out in the streets. And I'm like, okay, we get it. By this point, we understand that that dude is obsessed with birds / flying, right? And I'm like, but then is it about freedom? Because he has not really talked about freedom. He has not talked about, like you said, his family is not, his dad is super cool. His mom lets him keep all these birds. Like, if anything, Al's dad is more strict and like kind of sort of chains Al in boundaries and whatnot. So that's why I'm just so perplexed by that, and it definitely took away from my experience because it became repetitive to me to see him absolutely obsessed with birds just all the time. And that's why I really commend Al's character in this movie, because of how patient he was with Birdie. Like, by this point, we know that they're best friends. Like, I feel like Al was just so patient and going along with whatever Birdie contrived, and he did some weird stuff throughout the movie. So I must really commend him. So I was thinking of more parallels between this movie and Racing with the Moon. So if you remember, in Racing with the Moon, it was also Hopper and Nikki, so Nicolas Cage's character in that movie, being best of friends, But in that case, since Hopper was the more grounded person, Nikki could be a little bit more rash and like he made some decisions that were, not the best. So Hopper was definitely the guy that kind of held it together for both of them. Whereas in this case, it's the other way around. So Al's character is the one that's more grounded. And I think it's because he has to be, because Birdie is just weird. I found Al and Nikki's character very similar, but then because of how their friends were, the dynamic is different, which I found pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting dynamic. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, so it's interesting that we never understand why he's obsessed with birds. We're just like thrown into that from the get-go because the first time we see him is he's perched in that tree watching them play baseball. But why do you think why do you think Al is so devoted to being Birdie's friend? Because Birdie seems obsessed with birds. It's not like they've done each other a solid, throughout the movie that I can remember. And it seems that Al is a pretty popular guy, like you said. I think he has like two or three girlfriends throughout the movie, or girls that he's fooling around. It seems like, if anything, Birdie should be wanting to stick with Al all the time to become that more of a social teenager, being with more girls during the prom. Um, so yeah, what is there an answer?
So at least for me, I think it was one, they just hit it off really well as friends, I think. You sometimes meet people that you just vibe with really well and others you don't really. I think that was, at the start, that was that. I think Al was also fascinated by this introverted, weird guy that I think he wanted to know more about who he is and like why he's doing these weird things. But then I think it slowly develops over time into true friendship because Al respects Birdie's sincerity and willingness to stick by his ideals, or like his character. One situation that really sticks out to me for this one is the whole car situation. So if you remember, they drive out to, so first of all, they buy this janky car from a scrapyard guy, the big guy. They then fix it up, make it like run and everything, and then they're just driving around in that, right? So for I think for tax purposes or insurance purposes, it's actually under Al's dad's name. But it belongs to them because they bought it with their money. They fixed it up, they're driving it. So they go to Atlantic City for like one night or a couple of nights, something like that, for the weekend maybe. And then they're like, Al's dad notices the car missing. Now, I don't know if he thinks just the car is missing or the boys are like, I don't know what he's thinking, but he reports the car as stolen. And then they get caught with it, so they go to jail. So Al's dad and mom come pick them up from jail. So what I think is he was mad that they went to Atlantic City, and like, that's why he got mad. And then he actually sells the car, and Birdie gets really angry. There's a big altercation. Like, I didn't think he would go that far, but he incessantly like prods Al's dad to like tell the guy who he sold the car to that he would talk with that guy. And then you hear Al talk about that, and he's like, I would never have been able to stand up to my dad like that, So I think the reason Al really likes Birdie and admires and respects Birdie is because of his absolute unwillingness to give up his morals, which maybe Al is struggling with himself, not being able to do something like that, to be more cowardly and whatnot.
Okay, so throughout the movie, it's kind of a flashback, flash forward kind of format where we begin to see the relationship between Al and Birdie develop at the same time, where Al is trying to mend it while Birdie is in the psychiatric hospital. So they go to Vietnam, and Al gets burned in the face by some mortar shell that gets thrown his way. So he actually also has PTSD. And then Birdie is in a helicopter crash. That seems to be like a horrific crash. It looks to me that everyone in the
Died except Birdie, yeah.
yeah, which is ironic because he wants to fly all the time. He was in a helicopter crash. I thought there was some irony there. But then he comes back from Vietnam. Birdie comes back, and he is put into a psych ward. And this whole time, he's just like lying like a in fetus position everywhere in the room, under the bed, behind the toilet, behind the sink, completely coward. Does not talk to anyone. So the the doctor brings Al to see if he could mend him and make him talk. So through the memories of their childhood, that's how Al approaches the rehabilitation of Birdy, which they're not able to do at the hospital. So that's why they bring Al in. I enjoyed that 50% of the movie more because it relies on memories, and it's almost an excuse to tell the viewer where they're coming from. And I wonder how how the author did it in the book.
Right, right, right.
I also think that it's a good storytelling mechanism, of course, to approach the story in that way, because you start uncovering. It's like digging a hole and finding treasures in the hole. You at the beginning you're like, why is Al coming to Birdie all the time? Why is he so what's the word?
Insistent.
Yeah, why is he so insistent in wanting to make him talk and pushing the doctor to keep trying, to keep trying? And it almost drives him to the point of madness because Al stays in the hospital while he's trying to do this with Birdie, and I can only assume that it's maybe a few weeks, a month that he stays there. And there are several times where he's talking to Birdie, and he's telling Birdie, please, you have to start talking or else they're going to think I'm crazy. And there's one scene where Nicolas Cage's character, Al, wakes up in a sweat from a dream because of PTSD. And at that point, I was thinking that maybe it was some sort of rehab hospital for vets where they just have other people that have massive PTSD and they need constant care, like Birdie. So I thought it was interesting that it's like Al has got to be there to bring Birdie back. And if Al doesn't, because Al is so obsessed with bringing him back, the obsession is going to drive the doctors to keep Al in the hospital with Birdie forever, which I thought it was an interesting way to approach Al's spiraling insanity almost.
Right, right. So, from what I read afterwards, I think they were both patients in the same hospital, just in different wings. And Al was being treated. I mean, at the beginning of the movie, we see Al being treated himself because he has to have his face reconstructed because of the damage from the blast. And then he's sent over to look after Birdie or help him. But then from the very start, we have kind of been told that it's a set time frame that he has to do this, both for his sake and for Birdie's. Because if he can't help fix Birdie by this time, then Birdie is going to be sent to an actual mental institution. For now, it just seems, like you said, a PTSD hospital for, all kinds of patients. So yeah, you're right. Like for both of them, it's a facility to help both of them. And honestly, at one point in the movie, I even thought that so have you seen you've seen Fight Club, right? You've seen Fight Club. Have you seen Shutter Island? Yeah. So I thought at one point that Nicolas Cage's character Al was the patient who was going crazy, and this whole construct of Birdie being there for Al to help him was actually for them to help Al, because there are a few pointers. So one of them is at one point in the movie, if you remember, Al tries to help Birdie. He doesn't succeed. Birdie is dead silent. And then Al goes and he wants to leave the room. He goes to the door. It's locked. And he gets really angry. He gets really agitated. So that was my first hint. My second hint was the doctor himself kind of asking Al questions, what his past illnesses were and stuff like that. His secretary who kept spitting all the time, that guy asking Al some questions, so at one point in the movie, I almost thought, wait, does Birdie off the present, off the psych ward, even exist? Because he is absolutely motionless. It's Al we see talking and doing all these things. So that's how far I almost went. But you are right. Eventually, it does turn out that we think this whole movie is going in the direction of Al being there to help Birdie recover from his PTSD. But then we learn at the end that it goes both ways. So Al also suffered himself from a huge PTSD. The bomb exploded near him. His face was destroyed. It needed to be reconstructed. He's not sure once the bandage... So he's heavily bandaged in this post-war scenes. He's not sure what kind of Al is going to come out once the bandages come off. He doesn't know what he's going to look like, who's under there, how the war has scarred him. So I think as much as Birdy needs Al also needs Birdy, because in order to recapture his past, he needs his best friend. And through all the steps that he takes or attempts that he makes to... I rhymed there. To help Birdy, he realizes at the very end, or at least I don't know if he realizes, but the thing he says at the very end where he's like, Birdy, I also need you. Like you said, they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to send you to a mental institution. Please come back because I need you too. And that's when Birdy snaps out of it. I think Birdy realizes that my friend is also suffering and I need to be there for him. And that's the first time we realize Birdy talks back. And Nicolas Cage's character, Al, coins it perfectly when he says, you are perched up here, hiding from everyone, pretending to be a bird. It's because of your fear, not because you are not getting, you're not understanding, it's not like you're not processing everything that's going on. You know what's going on. It's just that you're scared and you feel caged and, so it's a nice symbolism for sure. So yeah, I really enjoyed that dynamic of their friendship.
So it's an interesting interpretation about about it ending like Shutter Island. When he was trying to get out, I honestly didn't think anything like that we were being tricked. I thought it was just his PTSD kicking in, not wanting to be locked in. But I do see what you mean with the questions from the doctor, because there are some questions that he asks that are like very personal of Al when Al isn't the one they're treating. So the way I remember it is, Al gets his bandages in another hospital and then takes the train to see Birdy. So and it's when those personal questions start. I think he asks him something about his mother or his home life, and that's when Al pushes back and says like, this is irrelevant. This isn't for me. So at that point, I did have a slight hint of like, hold on a second, did they maybe reel him in as a kind of a reverse psychology thing where we need this guy because he's completely crazy? But yeah, the obsession with birds, I want to go back to it because it mystifies the complete character to me. Like, he's in the room in the psych ward, perched like a bird is on a branch, and it... At the end of the movie, do you think that Birdy actually speaks, or do you think that it's Al wanting Birdy to speak? Because Birdy doesn't speak when the nurses get there or when the doctor's there, and he speaks. I don't know if you noticed, but the way the scenes are cut are very, very interesting, because as soon as he speaks, they cut back to Nicolas Cage instantly. They give no few seconds after Birdy says anything. So that kind of makes me think that it's almost like him wanting to hear Birdy speak. So do you think that he speaks, or do you think it's just Al's mind?
That's a great point. Now that you say it, maybe that was the case. What I understood it as was Birdy did speak, but only to Al. So Birdy has been, throughout the movie, he's been shown to talk about or discuss things only with people he cares about, and only about things he cares about. So birds and like Al. So the fact that he realized that Al needs him as much as he needs Al was the reason he snapped out of it all. And at one point, if you remember, he even smiled, like when he was alone, reminiscing about the past. Al talks about this statue. It was a very funny scene. He smiles, like we see him smile. So that makes me think that, yeah, he's processing everything. He understands everything. He's very depressed, and he has lost the willingness to kind of keep himself going. He doesn't care about things so much. That's why if Al is the only person he cares about, he's willing to kind of pull himself out of his, his misery and his like despair and his trench, and like for Al's sake, willing to like live again, so that's what I got out of it. So let me dive into a couple of criticism I have. I think this is a good place to talk about them. So one, weird, like Carl would say, weird, isn't it? Like the bird obsession, I could not get over it. I've talked about it though. I'll move on to the next point. My next biggest gripe was how at the end, the ending, so we can talk about the ending here. At the end, we see them trying to escape from I almost said prison, from the from the psych ward, from the hospital, and we see Birdy go up to the rooftop and jump, and then Al is like, "No, Birdy, no!" And then we see that it was just like one story, and he's just on the ground, like he's like, "You coming?" And I kind of found that a bit jarring. I know there are some comedic moments in the movie, and if you noticed, through all those comedic moments, it was La Bamba that was playing the music.
Yeah.
That was so funny. But I just felt it was a little bit disingenuous that they decided to end the movie on a lighter note. Like, I'm wondering, did this movie want us to take it seriously or not? Like, if they end on a light note, does that mean they're just like, oh, haha, like, psych, gotcha? Or did that mean that, like, they're still good friends and they can recover from, like, was it a hopeful scene or a hopeful end? Or was it a, psh, like, gotcha kind of end, So, I don't know. What do you think that was?
So it's tricky. It's tricky when you end a story in the climax, because there's no conclusion to it. It just ends in the climax. And at the end of the movie, they're able to escape the cell where Birdy is being kept, similar to a bird. There's that irony
Exactly.
too, where Birdy sleeps when he's not in the war. He sleeps in his room, and he's built this bird pen, this pigeon pen. And then he goes, and it seems like he's fine. He's like, if you keep a bird at home, you keep him in the pen, he's fine. So, and he's always looking at the window too. So, in all of this symbolism that we have been built up to expect and want for the character, they break out, similar to when he breaks out after prom, when he breaks out of when he has this transcendental dream, and he starts flying around his neighborhood. Al comes and they start bolting it to the upstairs of the psych ward, and then not 5 minutes after, that very emotional monologue with Nicolas Cage, where he's like hugging him, crying, I need you, you need me, so and so, and then not 5 minutes after, the movie ends in this very climactic moment that is just not fulfilling at all. And it felt, I didn't feel satisfied by the ending, because I expected to see more of either them reconciling, even if it would have been just the final scene, like 5 minutes back home or something like that.
Right.
But them getting away from the psych ward in that way, and then the last word that Birdy says, he just looks up at Al and he says, "What?"
Yeah.
And then La Bamba starts playing. It just seems so off-putting. I didn't like it at all.
That's how I felt as well.
I don't know if so it's almost not, I don't want to say making fun of the viewer, but throughout this whole movie you're talking about birds and symbolism and freedom, and then you're put in a cage, and then you want to be free, you want to be a normal person again after the PTSD, and then it ends like that. Like, okay, he gets his freedom, but I don't know.
What happened?
What about Al too? Because he's suffering from PTSD. I don't know. It felt very off-putting.
That also makes me think, was there, for this case too, was there a director's cut where there was more, Like, was this a time constraint thing where they had to keep under certain,
Do you know how the book ends?
No, I would have to read the book. I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
I
wonder if
wonder
it
how
ends
much
like
they
that.
changed. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder how much they changed, for sure. Yeah. Again, if it's happening in the book, if a lot of it is happening in Al's head, then I think it'd be easier to tease out what he's thinking, like what's going on. But again, it's hard to transfer that onto the screen. Yeah. Yeah, the ending was definitely not satisfying. I read that some people were super happy with the ending, some people were not, so it's like it's a split call, I think. And yeah, so another gripe I had, and this is the final major one. Other things are, small things. But this one was about how little time we spend in the actual war, because we talk about this post-war PTSD phase, and then we flash back to their childhood before pre-war phase. But then if they suffered so much during the war, I would have felt nice or fulfilled or satisfied if we saw them interact with their fellow army men, because we know how their characters are so different, their personalities are so different. Like, I would have liked to see Al become super popular among his army friends, kind of grow in rank, like be this really dashing like soldier, whereas Birdy get more and more kind of in his mind and recluse. Since if Al was the guy that understood him and was such a good friend for him, I would assume if he went to war, he would have no friends and like he would have really suffered. I would have felt more like invested in the story if I could see that happen, and that would have made their confrontation right before. So I'm going to quickly explain that as well. So basically, after prom, Al comes to see Birdy. He thinks Birdy is like had a date or like had a good night after his prom, but it turns out Birdy just dreamt he was a bird, and they have this altercation where Al basically asks Birdy to snap out of it. That's how I felt too, so I don't blame him. And then Birdy says, "Hey, I thought like if anyone could understand me, you would." And then Al just leaves, and then we see, I don't know if it was right after or like weeks after or something like that, but we see Al like all packed up, being drafted, going away. And then we see him pass by Birdy. Birdy looks down, and Birdy's favorite bird, Perda, flies out of the window, goes past Al, flies back, and then Birdy is trying to get the window open because Perda is trying to come back. But then he doesn't manage to do it in time, so Perda just smacks against the wall or the window and then breaks in, but she's dead because she hit the window at a high speed. And then Birdy is really traumatized by that, by the loss of his best friend, both of them, Al and Perda. And then I would have liked to have seen the aftermath of that,
Mm-hmm.
like directly when we go into the war. Like, there's this blank phase where both of them are friends, get drafted, and then post PTSD. Like, I think an important part of their life was that, during the war, which led to the accidents, I think. So, I don't know. I would have... What do you think?
Yeah, I agree, because so much of the movie takes place in the aftermath of Birdy's experience in the war. I feel like reducing that to just 5 minutes of watching a helicopter crash. I mean, I get it because, war veterans do suffer from PTSD. But yeah, I totally agree. I wish we had more
Yeah.
more points of view from the army and because imagine Birdy perching up like a bird at the camp in Vietnam. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe not that far off from his high school experience, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But because they were so young too, 19 years old, and then they went off to war. Very similar to Racing with the Moon.
Let's quickly talk about Nicolas Cage's performance in this movie as well. So we've talked a lot about Al, so I don't think we need to dive too deeply. I think he really did well in this movie. Apparently, for the post-war scenes, since he needed to look kind of battered and like, suffering with PTSD. Apparently he lost like 15 pounds of weight, and he also had 2 of his teeth removed without anesthesia apparently. So
Oh my god.
props to him. He actually and he looks like it. He looks pretty, battered and scarred.
He looks more frail too in the hospital scenes.
Yeah, and he looks more adult. He looks more like a kid in the pre-war scenes, and he looks more like right off the bat. I was like, oh, he looks kind of adult in these movies, and I know like around what age he is, right? So I was like, huh, that's pretty cool. But then we see him in the flashback. He's like a kid again. So I was like, okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, I really enjoyed his performance here. I think, again, like seeing him in Francis Ford Coppola movies versus non-Francis Ford Coppola movies, like it's definitely a difference. Like I don't know if it's the part that he's given or how he feels about acting in a movie that is directed by his uncle versus not, But I think I've enjoyed him more in non-Francis Ford Coppola movies. I think he can show more of his acting chops. Of course, he's taking more screen time as well, but as a character that's like solid and who kind of handles this in both of the so not Valley Girl, but both with Racing with the Moon and this one, he really does a good job of portraying this friend, like this solid friend who is flawed in his own ways, Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I think you said this last week about the starring in Francis Ford Coppola movies, and I'm starting to see it because I don't know if maybe it's because he's surrounded by much bigger names in Francis Ford Coppola movies.
That's also
so
true.
he's kind of reduced to because he's not big at this point. But yeah, I think he did a phenomenal job. I think the standout scene for me was, and I honestly couldn't tell you what the monologue is about because I was so entranced in it. I think he did a really good job in that one monologue right before the end of the movie, and then throughout all of the entire movie, I think he did a phenomenal job.
And did it remind you? Like, it reminded me of the monologue that he had in The Best of Times, all the way back to our first episode. So it's crazy because that monologue about going to war, proving himself, and then you jump to Racing with the Moon, where he is also thinking about going to war, and he, like, to Hopper, he just keeps saying these small things about, like, we're going to do this, like, we're going to, kill the enemy, blah, blah, blah. And then in this movie, you see him actually go off to war. It's fascinating to me. It feels like one timeline where, like, we're seeing different portions, So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if once we've seen a few dozen movies, we could do like a theory where everything takes place in the same timeline.
Yeah, for
sure.
sure.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. But I really enjoyed his performance.
Overall, what rating would you give Nicolas Cage?
I think he deserves at least an 8 here, if not more. Yeah, like I really enjoyed his acting. It was very believable, both pre-war and post-war. You can see like a clear difference of how confident he was before the war, how willing to be a good friend he was, how like relaxed he was, versus after the war, how unsure of himself and the things around him he is. He's very easily agitated, frustrated. A little bit of rage cage comes out. I do think the doctor was a bit of a dick to him as well. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know why the doctor... Like, dude, if you're bringing this guy to help you, why are you being a dick to him, Like...
So I feel like that was very similar to when they make a mystery movie with a detective that is preventing the main guy from fulfilling his quest. Like, you've seen Arrival with Amy Adams and Jeremy Renner?
Oh, yeah.
So Forrest Whitaker in that movie, he plays the main guy at the base. He is always, so he hires these 2 experts in linguistics, and I think he's a biologist, and he brings them together to help him solve it. And the entire movie, he's railing against them. Like, why? And I think it's the same kind of story structure where you have someone bringing him in, and then the same person who's bringing him in thinks that they're better, for whatever reason, I am not a big fan of it, and it shows that use it, that plot device, if you want to call it a plot device. I don't think it's a device. It's a hindrance, because it just doesn't make any sense. In the real world, if you ask for someone's help, you're going to give them all the resources they need, and by the end of the movie, the doctor is telling Al, like, come on, you really have to hurry here. It's like, come on, you're trying to save this guy. Like, A, what's the rush? B, why are you being this way? So yeah, completely agree.
I agree. Yeah. So yeah, I give him an 8. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I gave him an 8 as well. What would you give the movie?
I think the movie was a 7.5 for me. I would have given it an 8 or higher as well, but just the bird insanity, I'm gonna say. Like, it just kind of put me off throughout the movie. I'm like, okay, I get it. Just move past, move past it. So yeah, 7.5.
Yeah.
It's still a very good movie, I think.
I gave it between 6.5 and 7. I really like the flip flopping of the past and present. I completely agree with you with the bird stuff. There's a point in the movie right before they go to war where it's probably 15-20 minutes of Birdy in his cage and different scenes of just him coming home, going into the cage. And I get that it's a transformation, but like you said, let's move past it and concentrate on other parts, because it's a 2-hour movie. So when you I know that people prefer an hour and a half movies, it's the standard. But when you see the runtime of a movie like this and you see 2 hours, you kind of expect it to dive deeper. Like if we think of really long movies, I think like Schindler's List that we had mentioned in the past, Interstellar, Shutter Island, these movies that dive really, really deep into themes and fleshing characters out. I don't know if this movie deserved to even be 2 hours, honestly.
I know. Yeah, like a good example of fleshing someone out to then make them make the decisions they do is the new Joker. Like, we see his circumstances. You've seen that. That was a phenomenal movie. We see his circumstances and how slowly the world and his life is like poking him and prodding him and like making him so miserable that he snaps at one point, right? But like you said, in Birdy's case, we don't really see him. His dad is nice. He has a best friend who's nice. Like, his mom is okay. Like, maybe not the best, but she's fine. Like, she's still letting him keep all these birds. So we really don't know, at least pre-war, the reason why he's so obsessed. Like, if there was a part of his life that he really didn't like living, so he had to confine himself and find joy somewhere else, that would have made more sense. Then we would have understood, okay, that's why he's so obsessed with flying, because he wants to break free of his situation and like fly, that would have made so much more sense. But there's no such thing. Like, he's literally just like, he has like almost like a fetish for these birds. So that was just weird.
Thanks for joining us on our 7th episode of The Uncaging. I cannot believe that we have come this far.
I know, it's crazy.
We just discussed Birdy, a 1984 movie with Nicolas Cage and Matthew Modine.
Bodine, I don't know. Tomato.
Please leave us a review wherever you are listening on and share with your friends. You can send us voice notes as always, and we will do our best to feature on next week's episode. We cannot feature anything if we are not getting voice notes. So if you want to hear yourself in an episode of The Uncaging, send us one. You can also send us an email with shoutouts and comments that we will also feature on the upcoming episode. You can write us at theuncaging@gmail.com, and you will also find that email in the Spotify page. So you can just click that and it'll open straight in your email.
Boom.
Cannot be easier.
Boom. Two steps.
We are looking forward to watching and reviewing The Boy in Blue, a biopic about Ned Hanlon, a 19th century Canadian sculler and world champion. We are going to find out next week exactly what a sculler is, because I have no idea.
I thought you meant scholar, but you said it weird, but okay, you actually meant scholar. Scholar.
Join us next week, and thank you for listening, as always.
Thank you for listening, everyone. In this happy time of the year, but in a weird year. I hope you enjoy Christmas. It may have been that for everyone, they also may not have been able to visit family. But thankfully, we're virtually connected everywhere. So Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to all your family. Thank you for being careful. Vaccines are slowly being distributed all over the world. So we are really hopeful that the number of cases and deaths go down so that 2021 becomes more and more normal and we can forget about 2020.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully one day we will be able to do an in-person episode. That would be so sick.
Oh my god, yes, you're right. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, Merry Christmas, and we'll catch you on next episode.
Bye-bye. Have a good week.